Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Alpha and watched the stars change. The darkness of space suddenly filled with massive ships that appeared from nowhere. These alien vessels were huge, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls looked like crystal and metal mixed together, and they gleamed with a cold light that made Jake's stomach turn. Commander Lisa Bennett sat at her station and received the first message from the alien fleet. The transmission came through, in perfect English, which surprised everyone on the bridge. The voice was cold and without feeling, like a machine talking. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet has been selected for resource extraction. You have 72 hours to evacuate Earth completely. All humans must leave the planet before mining operations begin. Resistance will be met with total destruction." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Every face showed the same mix of fear and anger. These aliens had just told humanity to abandon their home planet like it was nothing more than a rock to be mined. Lisa turned to Jake with wide eyes. "Sir, they're treating us like we don't matter at all, like we're just insects that need to be moved out of the way." Jake nodded grimly. The alien message continued with detailed instructions about evacuation procedures and warnings about what would happen to anyone who stayed behind. The Zephyrians spoke about humans, the way humans might talk about ants in a garden that needed to be cleared. Down on Earth, President Marcus Hayes was pulled from a meeting about trade policies and rushed to the emergency command center deep beneath Washington. The massive underground facility had been built during the Cold War, but had been updated with the most advanced technology available. General Ryan Cooper was already there when the president arrived. His face was grim as he pointed to the screens, showing the alien fleet. "Mr. President, we count at least 200 ships out there. Each one is the size of a city. Our entire space fleet couldn't scratch the paint on one of those things." Admiral Kate Sullivan added her own report from the naval perspective. "These Zephyrians have done this before. Our deep space monitoring stations picked up similar attacks on other worlds over the past few years. Every planet they targeted was completely stripped of resources within months." President Hayes sat down heavily in his chair. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" "At least 50 that we know of," General Cooper replied. "Maybe more. They follow the same pattern every time. Show up with overwhelming force, give the locals a few days to evacuate, then start mining. Most species just give up and run." The president looked at the faces around the table. These were the best military minds humanity had, and they all looked defeated before the fight had even started. But then Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the Deep Space Research Division spoke up. "Mr. President, there's something these aliens don't know about us." Everyone turned to look at the small woman with graying hair who had been quiet until now. Dr. Rodriguez had been working on classified projects for the past 20 years, and most people in the room had no idea what she actually did. "We've been preparing for this day since we first detected alien signals in 2019, she said quietly. "Project Fortress has been building defenses throughout the solar system for 6 years now." General Cooper frowned. "What are you talking about? I would know about any major military construction." Dr. Rodriguez smiled for the first time since entering the room. "Not military construction, General. Scientific research stations, mining operations, terraforming projects. All perfectly normal civilian activities that happen to have secondary purposes." She activated a holographic display that showed the entire solar system. Suddenly, dozens of installations appeared that no one in the room had known existed. Hidden bases on asteroids, weapon platforms disguised as research stations, and massive defensive systems built into what everyone thought were simple mining operations. Every major nation on Earth has been contributing to Project Fortress without knowing the full scope. Dr. Rodriguez continued. "We told each country they were building defensive systems against possible threats. We just never specified that the threats were alien rather than terrestrial." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. "Are you telling us we actually have weapons that can fight these things?" "I'm telling you, we have weapons these aliens have never seen before. Human technology has advanced incredibly fast over the past 6 years, especially in areas these Zephyrians won't expect. They think we're primitive because we haven't left our solar system yet. They have no idea what we've been building here at home." President Hayes felt hope stirring in his chest for the first time since the aliens arrived. What exactly are we talking about here, Doctor? Dr. Rodriguez's smile grew wider. Plasma cannons that can punch through any known armor. Kinetic weapons that strike with the force of nuclear bombs. Defensive shields that can protect entire continents. And most importantly, a quantum communication network that lets us coordinate all of these systems instantly across the entire solar system. She paused and looked around the room. The Zephyrians are used to fighting species that surrender after the first show of force. They've never faced anyone who was ready for them. General Cooper was studying the holographic display with growing amazement. How did you keep this secret from everyone? The same way any large project stays secret. Compartmentalization. Each team only knew their small part. The Chinese thought they were building asteroid mining equipment. The Russians thought they were developing new space defense systems. The Americans thought they were working on Mars colonization technology. Everyone was right, but none of them saw the big picture. President Hayes stood up and walked to the display. He could see installations throughout the solar system, all connected by the quantum communication network Dr. Rodriguez had mentioned. It was the most ambitious military project in human history, and it had been built right under everyone's noses. So what do we do now? He asked. Dr. Rodriguez's expression became serious again. Now we send these Zephyrians a message they'll never forget. Instead of begging for mercy, we give them an ultimatum of our own. The president looked around the room at his advisors. Fear was being replaced by determination on every face. For the first time since the alien fleet arrived, humans were not thinking about running away. Draft the response, President Hayes ordered. Make it clear that Earth is not some helpless planet they can push around. If the Zephyrian Empire wants a fight, they're about to get one they never expected. Captain Sam Parker sat in the pilot seat of the small diplomatic vessel as it approached the massive Zephyrian flagship. The alien ship was so large that it blotted out the stars behind it. Sam's hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was racing. He carried humanity's response to the alien ultimatum, and he knew it was not what they expected. The Zephyrian flagship was called the Dominator, which told Sam everything he needed to know about how these aliens thought. Their ship looked like a floating city made of crystal and metal. Weapon ports covered its surface like the eyes of some giant insect. Sam had never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Diplomatic vessel, you are cleared. To dock, came the cold voice from the Zephyrian control center. Overlord Vexithar will receive your surrender terms. Sam smiled grimly as he guided his ship into the alien docking bay. The Zephyrians were so confident that they hadn't even considered the possibility that humans might not surrender. That overconfidence was going to be their first mistake. The docking bay was enormous, filled with alien technology that hummed with power. Zephyrian soldiers waited for Sam as he stepped off his ship. They were tall and thin, with pale skin that looked almost transparent. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with the arrogance of conquerors who had never faced real resistance. Sam was escorted through corridors that stretched on forever. Everything was smooth and curved, like the inside of some living creature. The walls glowed with soft light that made Sam feel uncomfortable, as if the ship itself was watching him. Overlord Vexthar waited in a chamber that was clearly designed to impress visitors. The alien leader sat on a throne made of what looked like living crystal. He was larger than the other Zephyrians, and his skin had a bluish tint that marked him as nobility. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire room. Human, you bring the surrender of your species. Make it quick. I have other worlds to conquer. Sam reached into his diplomatic pouch and pulled out a sealed document. He handed it to one of the Zephyrian advisors, who passed it to Vexthar with obvious boredom. The Overlord opened the document, expecting to read humanity's terms of surrender. Instead, his large eyes grew even wider as he read humanity's ultimatum. This is impossible, Vexthar said after a long moment of silence. Your species demands that we withdraw from your system within 24 hours. You threaten us with war if we begin mining operations. This must be some kind of joke. Sam stood straight and looked directly at the alien leader. No joke, Overlord. That document is signed by every nation on Earth, 200 countries speaking. With one voice, "We're not surrendering, we're telling you to leave." Vexthar stood up from his throne, his height making him tower over Sam. "Your primitive species has ships that can barely reach your own moon. You have weapons that are thousands of years behind ours. What makes you think you can threaten the Zephyrian Empire?" "Maybe you should ask yourself why we're so confident," Sam replied calmly. "What do we know that you don't?" Back on Earth, Colonel Danny Foster was coordinating the activation of humanity's hidden defenses. In command centers around the world, technicians were bringing online systems that had been waiting years for this moment. Danny watched screens showing defensive installations throughout the solar system coming alive. "Lunar Base Charlie is online," reported one technician. "All plasma cannon arrays are ready for combat. Asteroid Belt Platform 7 confirms ready status," called another. "Kinetic bombardment system is loaded and targeted." Danny smiled as report after report came in. For years, humanity had been building these weapons in secret, disguising them as civilian projects. The aliens had been watching Earth through their long-range sensors, but they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. Dr. Maria Santos was in her laboratory activating the quantum entanglement communication network that would coordinate all of Earth's defenses. The system was her life's work, based on technology that the Zephyrians didn't even know was possible. While they relied on radio signals that took time to cross space, humans could now communicate instantly across the entire solar system, so "Network is stable," Maria announced as the last connection came online. "All defensive positions are now linked. We can coordinate attacks and defensive measures in real time." In a secure facility in Colorado, tech specialist Alex Johnson was doing something that would have seemed impossible just hours before. He was hacking into Zephyrian computer systems. The aliens were so confident in their technology that they had never considered that a primitive species might be able to break their codes. "I'm in," Alex announced to his team. "Their security is actually pretty weak. They've never had to deal with hackers before. I can see their fleet positions, weapon status, even their communication channels." Alex's fingers flew over his keyboard as he planted viruses in the Zephyrian systems. These programs would activate later, at just the right moment to cause maximum confusion during battle. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Overlord Vexithar was reading humanity's ultimatum for the third time. He could not believe what he was seeing. The document demanded immediate withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces. It threatened war if mining operations began. Most shocking of all, it was signed by every nation on the planet Earth. "How is this possible?" he asked his advisors. "Every other species we have encountered splits into factions when threatened. They fight among themselves instead of fighting us. These humans have actually united against us." His military advisor, Commander Zeltar, studied the document with confusion. "Perhaps they are bluffing, Overlord. They must know they cannot defeat our fleet." Vexthar looked at Captain Sam, who stood calmly despite being surrounded by alien warriors who could kill him instantly. The human showed no fear, only determination. It was not the behavior of someone who was bluffing. "Human, your species will be destroyed if you oppose us," Vexthar warned. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. No one has ever successfully resisted the Zephyrian Empire." Sam smiled, and his confidence seemed to fill the room. "Overlord, you've never fought humans before. We're different from every other species you've encountered. We don't give up. We don't run away. And we've been preparing for this day a lot longer than you think." Vexithar's pride would not let him consider retreat. He had built his reputation on quick, overwhelming victories against helpless worlds. The idea that primitive humans might actually resist was unthinkable. "Very well," he declared. "If your species chooses destruction over wisdom, we will accommodate you. In 6 hours, we will begin bombardment of your major population centers. After we destroy a few cities, you will surrender like every other species has." Sam bowed slightly in mock respect. "Thank you for the warning, Overlord. My people will be ready for you." As Sam was escorted back to his ship, Vexthar was already ordering his fleet to prepare for battle. He was confident that one demonstration of Zephyrian power would break human resistance completely. He had no idea that humanity had been counting on exactly this reaction. The Zephyrian attack began exactly when Overlord Vexthar had promised. Massive energy beams lanced down from orbit toward Earth's major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, and a dozen other population centers were targeted simultaneously. The alien weapons carried enough power to level entire city blocks with each shot, but instead of destroying helpless civilians, the energy beams struck something unexpected. Shimmering barriers of blue light appeared over every targeted city. The alien weapons hit these defensive shields and simply vanished, absorbed by technology the Zephyrians had never seen before. Captain Nicole Adams watched the alien attack from her command post on Luna Base Charlie, hidden beneath the surface of the moon. For 6 years she had been preparing for this moment. The lunar base was disguised as a simple research station, but it was actually humanity's most advanced military installation. "All city shields are holding," reported her tactical officer. "The Zephyrians are hitting us with everything they have, but our defensive systems are absorbing their energy weapons completely." Nicole smiled as she watched the alien fleet on. Her tactical display. The Zephyrians had expected their first attack to break human resistance. Instead, they had revealed the positions of their most powerful ships while accomplishing nothing at all. "Begin Phase 2, Nicole ordered. "Launch all fighters." Hidden hangars opened throughout the solar system, from the moon, from Mars, from asteroid bases that the Zephyrians had never detected. Human starfighters emerged by the thousands. These ships were small and fast, built with technology that combined the best human engineering with innovations the aliens had never imagined. The Zephyrian fleet was spread out in a standard attack formation, perfect for bombarding a helpless planet, but it was completely wrong for defending against swarms of fast attack craft coming from every direction at once. Admiral Chris Thompson coordinated the counterattack from Mars Station Bravo. What the Zephyrians thought was a simple terraforming facility was actually a massive weapons platform. Hidden beneath the surface of Mars were railgun arrays that could launch projectiles at incredible speeds across the solar system. "Targeting the lead Zephyrian ships," Chris announced to his crew. "Fire when ready." The first salvo from Mars Base Bravo traveled at nearly the speed of light. Solid metal projectiles, each the size of a telephone pole, struck the Zephyrian flagship at devastating velocity. The alien ship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were completely useless against pure kinetic force. The Dominator shuddered as the railgun projectiles tore through its crystal armor. Overlord Vexthar was thrown from his command throne as his ship's systems began failing around him. "Impossible," he gasped as damage reports flooded in. "Their weapons are primitive. How are they penetrating our defenses?" Commander Zeltar struggled to make sense of the tactical displays. "Overlord, they're attacking from positions throughout the solar system. These humans have been building military installations for years, disguised as civilian facilities." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Amy Richardson was leading boarding parties against damaged Zephyrian ships. Her teams used small, fast assault craft to dock with alien vessels that had been crippled by the railgun attacks. The Zephyrians had never faced human marines in close combat before. Amy kicked in the door to a Zephyrian command center and found herself facing 6 alien warriors. They were taller and stronger than humans, but they moved slowly and predictably. Their military training emphasized rigid formations and following orders, which made them easy targets for humans who had been taught to think independently and adapt quickly. The fight was over in seconds. Amy's team moved through the alien ship like a pack of wolves, capturing prisoners and seizing control of critical systems. The Zephyrians fought bravely, but they had never encountered enemies who refused to follow predictable patterns. "This is impossible," one captured Zephyrian officer told Amy through a translation device. "Your species should have surrendered after our first attack. Every other species surrenders immediately." Amy checked her weapon and smiled grimly. "Maybe that's your problem. You've been fighting species that give up easily. We don't give up, ever." Throughout the solar system, human forces were achieving victories that should have been impossible. The Zephyrian Empire was based on overwhelming technological superiority and the assumption that primitive species would not resist seriously. But humanity had prepared for this battle in ways the aliens had never imagined. Alex Johnson's computer virus is activated throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Navigation systems began giving false readings. Weapon targeting computers started malfunctioning. Communication networks crashed and restarted randomly. The aliens found themselves fighting blind while humans could see and coordinate everything. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from Earth's primary command center. The quantum communication network was working perfectly, allowing human forces to coordinate attacks across billions of miles of space as if they were fighting in the same room. Zephyrian fleet is down to 60% combat effectiveness, she reported to President Hayes. Their formation is breaking apart. Several ships are retreating toward the outer system. President Hayes watched the tactical displays with amazement. Just hours before, humanity had faced what seemed like certain destruction. Now human forces were winning battles against an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "What's the status of their flagship?" he asked. Dr. Rodriguez consulted her displays. "The Dominator is severely damaged but still fighting. However, our boarding teams have captured significant sections of the ship. We're gathering intelligence on Zephyrian technology and military capabilities." On the bridge of the Dominator, Overlord Vexthar was beginning to understand the magnitude of his error. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by enemies he had dismissed as primitive insects. Human tactics were unlike anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. "Overlord," Commander Zeltar reported desperately. "We're receiving communications from across the galaxy. News of our defeat here is spreading to every world in the Empire. Subject species are beginning to rebel." Vexthar felt cold fear for the first time in his life. The Zephyrian Empire was built on the myth of invincibility. If that myth was broken, rebellions would spread like wildfire across hundreds of conquered worlds. "How is this possible?" he asked again. "These humans should have been helpless." From her position on Luna Base Charlie, Captain Nicole Adams was coordinating the final phase of the counterattack. Human reinforcements were arriving from hidden bases throughout the outer solar system. What the Zephyrians had thought was empty space was actually filled with defensive installations that had been years in the making. "Sir," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Zephyrian ships. They're requesting permission to withdraw from the solar system." Nicole considered the request. The battle was clearly won, but humanity needed to send a message that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. This was not just about defending Earth. This was about showing every species in Zephyrian territory that the Empire could be defeated. "Denied," she replied. "Tell them they can surrender completely or continue fighting. There is no third option." Tide of battle had turned completely. In just 6 hours, humanity had gone from facing extinction to achieving total victory. The Zephyrian Empire's reputation for invincibility was shattered, and the consequences would be felt throughout the galaxy. General Peter Brooks stood in the command center beneath Denver as reports came in from around the globe. Some Zephyrian troops had managed to land on Earth before the space battle turned against them. These ground forces were now discovering that conquering Earth would be much harder than conquering other worlds. "Sir, we have Zephyrian landings confirmed in 12 locations," reported Colonel Jane Mitchell. "They're targeting major population centers and industrial facilities just like their standard playbook says they should." Peter smiled grimly. "And how are our preparations working out?" "Better than we hoped, sir. Every single landing site was pre-targeted. Our defensive systems were waiting for them." The Zephyrians had landed expecting to find helpless civilian populations. Instead, they found that every human settlement had been prepared for invasion. What looked like ordinary towns and cities were actually fortified positions with hidden weapon emplacements and underground bunkers. In suburban Chicago, Zephyrian soldiers advanced down empty streets toward what their intelligence said was a major industrial center. The aliens moved in precise formations following tactics that had worked on dozens of other worlds. But as they approached the first buildings, the ground beneath their feet exploded. The entire neighborhood had been mined with explosives years in advance. Hidden sensors detected the alien troops and triggered buried charges that sent Zephyrian soldiers flying through the air. Before they could recover, Human defenders emerged from concealed positions and began attacking with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Commander Rachel Stone was monitoring the ground battle from her position. In orbit, her deep space reconnaissance fleet had been tracking Zephyrian movements throughout the galaxy for months, and she had critical intelligence that was about to change everything. "Sir," she reported to Admiral Morrison, "I'm receiving reports from our spy networks throughout Zephyrian space. The Empire is in chaos. News of their defeat here is spreading faster than they can control it." On her displays, Rachel could see the locations of Zephyrian fleets throughout the galaxy. Most of them were spread thin, trying to maintain control over hundreds of conquered worlds. The defeat at Earth had shattered their reputation for invincibility, and rebellions were starting everywhere. "How many worlds are rebelling?" Admiral Morrison asked. Rachel consulted her data streams. "At least 30 so far, and the number is growing every hour. The Zephyrians built their empire on fear, and that fear is evaporating fast." Dr. Benjamin Clark was having the time of his life in his laboratory beneath MIT. Human scientists had captured several intact Zephyrian ships, and they were reverse engineering alien technology with incredible speed. What should have taken years was happening in hours. "This is amazing," Ben told his team as they examined a Zephyrian energy weapon. "Their technology is advanced but incredibly specialized. They've been using the same designs for thousands of years without innovation." His assistant, Dr. Laura Kim, was analyzing alien computer systems. "It's like they've never had to adapt or improve. They just overwhelm primitive species with superior firepower. But once you understand their systems, they're actually quite simple to counter." Ben nodded as he made improvements to a captured Zephyrian shield generator. "Human technology might be newer, but it's more flexible. We can adapt and improve much faster than they can." Within hours, Ben's team had not only understood Zephyrian technology, but had found ways to improve it. Human creativity and innovation were proving to be more valuable than thousands of years of technological stagnation. On the bridge of the crippled Dominator, Overlord Vexthar was receiving the worst news of his life. His communications officer was barely able to speak as he delivered report after report of disaster. "Overlord, the rebellion on Kepler Prime has captured our main naval base. The uprising on New Centauri has seized our manufacturing facilities. 3 entire star systems have declared independence and are demanding reparations for decades of occupation." Vexthar looked around his ruined command center. Human boarding parties had captured most of his ship, and his remaining crew was barely keeping life support systems running. But the news from across the galaxy was even worse than his immediate situation. How did this happen so quickly? He asked his remaining advisors. Commander Zeltar, wounded but still at his post, provided the answer Vexthar didn't want to hear. "Sir, our entire empire was built on the belief that resistance was impossible. When humans proved that belief wrong, it gave hope to every oppressed species in our territory. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered through intimidation and overwhelming force. They had never developed the skills needed to maintain control when their subjects stopped being afraid. Now, with their military reputation destroyed, they were facing simultaneous rebellions across hundreds of worlds. Back on Earth, President Hayes was meeting with his advisors to discuss humanity's next moves. The immediate threat to Earth was over, but the situation in the galaxy was becoming more complex by the hour. "Mr. President," Dr. Rodriguez reported, "we're receiving communication requests from rebel groups throughout former Zephyrian space. They want human assistance in their liberation movements." General Cooper added his perspective on the military situation. "Our forces performed better than we ever imagined possible. We not only defended Earth successfully, we've essentially defeated the entire Zephyrian space fleet in this system." President Hayes considered the implications. "Are we talking about becoming involved in a galactic war?" "We may not have a choice," Admiral Sullivan replied. "The Zephyrian Empire is collapsing, but that could create chaos throughout the galaxy. If we don't help establish stable governments on liberated worlds, we could end up with something even worse than the Empire." Dr. Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing the current situation throughout Zephyrian space. Red indicators showed active rebellions. Yellow showed worlds in unrest, and green showed the few systems still under firm Empire control. The Empire is trying to consolidate their remaining forces to crush the rebellions, she explained. But they're stretched too thin. If we provide military and technical assistance to the rebel movements, we can ensure that freedom spreads throughout the galaxy. President Hayes looked at the tactical display showing dozens of worlds fighting for their freedom. The decision he made now would determine not just Earth's future, but the future of galactic civilization. "What kind of assistance are we talking about?" he asked. General Cooper answered immediately. "Our new technology gives us a significant advantage. We can provide weapons, training, and tactical support. Most importantly, we can coordinate rebel movements across multiple star systems using our quantum communication network." Admiral Sullivan added her own assessment. "Sir, we have the opportunity to reshape galactic politics completely. Instead of one empire controlling everything through force, we could help establish a confederation of free worlds based on mutual cooperation." President Hayes made his decision. "Draft orders for our deep space fleets. We're going beyond the solar system, not as conquerors but as liberators. It's time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like." As the meeting ended, Overlord Vexthar was finally ready to admit defeat. His empire was crumbling, his fleet was destroyed, and his reputation was ruined. But the humans had proven something that would change galactic civilization forever. Even the most powerful empire could fall when faced with species that refused to surrender. President Marcus Hayes stood before the cameras in the White House press room, but this time his audience was not just humanity. Through quantum communication networks, his words were being broadcast to every corner of the galaxy where rebellion against the Zephyrian Empire was spreading. "Citizens of Earth and oppressed peoples throughout the galaxy," he began. "Today marks not just humanity's victory over tyranny, but the beginning of a new age of freedom for all species." The president's message was being translated into hundreds of alien languages and transmitted to rebel groups on distant worlds. For the first time in galactic history, an entire empire was hearing terms of surrender from a species they had tried to destroy. "The Zephyrian Empire will immediately cease all military operations and begin withdrawing from every world they have conquered. Full reparations must be paid to all species that have suffered under their rule. Their military forces will be disbanded, and their leadership will face justice for crimes against countless civilizations." On the bridge of the captured Dominator, Overlord Vexthar listened to the human demands with growing despair. Captain Sam Parker stood beside him, no longer a diplomat, but a representative of the victorious human alliance. "These terms are impossible," Vexthar protested weakly. "The Empire spans thousands of worlds. We cannot simply abandon everything we have built." Sam looked at the defeated alien leader without sympathy. "You should have thought about that before you threatened to destroy Earth. Your empire was built on the suffering of innocent species. Now you get to watch it fall apart." Throughout the solar system, human fleets were preparing for their first missions beyond Earth's boundaries. Captain Jennifer Clark stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned starship Freedom as it prepared to depart for the Kepler system, where rebel forces were fighting desperately against Zephyrian occupation troops. "All systems ready, Captain," reported her tactical officer. "Our new hybrid propulsion system is online. We can reach Kepler Prime in 3 days instead of the months it would take using traditional Zephyrian drive technology." Jennifer smiled as she looked at her crew. Half were experienced human military personnel, but the other half were volunteers from species that had already been liberated from Zephyrian rule. Former slaves were now serving as equals on human ships, fighting to free their homeworlds. "Take us out," Jennifer ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like." Admiral Tony Martinez was establishing humanity's first permanent base outside the solar system in what had been the Zephyrian capital sector. The massive space station had been built by slave labor over decades, but now it served as headquarters for the Galactic Liberation Alliance. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving requests for assistance from 47 different rebel movements. Everyone wants human military advisors and access to our technology." Tony studied the tactical displays showing the collapse of Zephyrian power throughout the galaxy. What had once been a unified empire was now hundreds of individual battles for freedom. Human forces were providing the coordination and advanced technology that allowed these scattered rebellions to become an effective resistance movement. Prioritize the systems with the largest civilian populations, Tony decided. We need to prevent the Zephyrians from using innocent people as hostages. Dr. Sandra Williams was leading humanity's first diplomatic mission to newly liberated worlds. Her team was helping former Zephyrian subjects establish their own governments and develop economic relationships with other free species. The key is preventing these worlds from falling into chaos after liberation, Sandra explained to her staff. The Zephyrians controlled everything for so long that many species have forgotten how to govern themselves. Her work was complicated but rewarding. Each liberated world brought its own challenges and opportunities. Some species wanted to establish traditional monarchies, others preferred democratic systems, and a few were experimenting with completely new forms of government. The important thing is that they get to choose for themselves, Sandra continued. For the first time in generations, these species have the freedom to determine their own futures. Back on Earth, children were already learning about the war that had changed everything. In classrooms around the world, teachers were explaining how humanity had gone from facing extinction to leading a galactic revolution in just a matter of days. The Zephyrian Empire was like a big bully who picked on smaller kids, explained teacher Mary Johnson to her third-grade class. But when they tried to bully Earth, they discovered that humans don't give up easily. 8-year-old Tommy raised his hand. Why didn't the other aliens fight back before we showed them how? Mary smiled at the question that went to the heart of everything that had happened. Sometimes people need to see that bullies can be defeated before they find the courage to stand up for themselves. Earth showed everyone in the galaxy that even the biggest empire can fall if enough people work together. The transformation of galactic civilization was happening faster than anyone had imagined possible. Within months of the Battle of Earth, more than half of former Zephyrian territory had been liberated. The remaining Empire forces were retreating to their core worlds, trying desperately to maintain control over what little territory they had left. Overlord Vexthar spent his final days as a prisoner on Luna Base Charlie, watching through the viewports as human ships departed regularly for missions throughout the galaxy. Each launch represented another nail in the coffin of his former empire. "How did you know?" he asked Captain Sam during one of their conversations. "How did your species know that we would attack?" Sam considered the question carefully. "We didn't know for certain that you would attack. But we knew that somewhere in the galaxy there had to be species like yours, bullies who took what they wanted from anyone weaker than themselves. So we prepared for that possibility." Vexthar shook his head in amazement. "You spent years preparing for an enemy you weren't even sure existed?" "We spent years preparing to defend our freedom," Sam corrected. "The enemy didn't matter. What mattered was making sure that no one could take away what we had built." The final collapse of the Zephyrian Empire came not through military defeat but through internal rebellion. When the last Zephyrian worlds declared independence and joined the Galactic Liberation Alliance, it marked the end of the oldest and most powerful empire in galactic history. President Hayes stood in the same press room where he had announced humanity's ultimatum to the Zephyrians. But now he was addressing not a desperate species facing extinction, but the leader of a new galactic civilization built on freedom and cooperation. Today marks the official end of the Zephyrian Empire and the birth of the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds, he announced. Every species that chooses to join us will be welcomed as equals regardless of their size, technology, or military power. The new federation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of one species dominating all others, it was a voluntary alliance of equals working together for mutual benefit. Trade replaced conquest, cooperation replaced oppression, and diversity replaced uniformity. In schools throughout the galaxy, children of dozens of different species were learning about the day when Earth issued an ultimatum to an empire and made it stick. The human example had proven that freedom was stronger than fear, that cooperation was more powerful than conquest, and that even the smallest species could change the course of galactic history. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, but its legacy lived on as a warning to any future tyrants. The galaxy had learned that there would always be someone ready to stand up to oppression, no matter how powerful the oppressor might seem. Humanity had saved not just their own world, but the entire galaxy, and in doing so, they had proven that hope could triumph over fear, that unity could overcome division, and that freedom was worth any sacrifice to preserve.